Sarah Martinez wiped the grease from her hands and looked around the small garage where she worked. The sign above read, Martinez Auto Repair, but most people in town just called it that little shop on Elm Street. At 28 years old, Sarah had been fixing cars since she was 16. Her father taught her everything he knew before he passed away 3 years ago. Now, she ran the shop alone, working long hours and barely making enough money to pay the bills. People didn't take her seriously. When customers came in, they often asked, "Is there a man who can help me?" Or, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" Sarah learned to smile and nod, then show them her skills under the hood of their cars. She was good at her job, really good, but that didn't stop people from doubting her. The problem wasn't just the customers, it was the money. The garage building was old and falling apart. The roof leaked when it rained. The tools were worn out. And every month, Sarah struggled to pay rent to Mr. Henderson, the grumpy old landlord who owned half the buildings on Elm Street. "You're 2 weeks late again," Mr. Henderson said one Tuesday morning, standing in the doorway of her shop with his arms crossed. He was a tall man with gray hair and a permanent frown on his face. "I know, Mr. Henderson, I'm sorry. Business has been slow. I'll have your money by Friday," Sarah promised, her stomach twisting with worry. "You better," he grumbled, "or you're out. I've got other people interested in this space, people who can actually pay on time." After he left, Sarah sat down on an old tire and put her head in her hands. She was tired, tired of struggling, tired of being looked down on, tired of barely getting by. That's when she saw the newspaper someone had left on her workbench. It was open to the classified section. Her eyes landed on a small ad in the corner. Sarah almost laughed. Who would buy a shed? But then she had an idea. Her shop was small and she had nowhere to store old parts and equipment. A shed might be perfect. Even if it was rusty and falling apart, she could fix it up. That's what she did, after all. She fixed things. The next day, Sarah called the number in the ad. An elderly woman named Mrs. Peterson answered. "Oh yes, dear. That old shed. It's been on my property for who knows how long. My late husband built it back in the 1960s. I'm moving to live with my daughter, and I need it gone before the new owners take over the land." "Can I come see it?" Sarah asked. "Of course, but I'm warning you, it's not pretty. It's rusty, covered in weeds, and honestly, I'm not even sure it's still standing. But if you can haul it away, it's yours for $100. That Saturday, Sarah drove her old pickup truck to the address Mrs. Peterson gave her. The property was on the edge of town, down a long dirt road surrounded by tall trees. It felt like she was driving into the middle of nowhere. When she arrived, she found a small, crooked house with peeling paint. Mrs. Peterson came out to greet her, a kind-looking woman in her 70s with white hair and a warm smile. "You must be Sarah. Come, come, the shed is out back." They walked around the house, through an overgrown garden, and there it was. The shed was worse than Sarah expected. It was made of old, rusted metal sheets barely held together by wooden frames. Vines and weeds had grown up around it, and part of the roof had caved in. "Told you it was bad," Mrs. Peterson said with an apologetic smile. But Sarah wasn't discouraged. She walked around the shed, examining it carefully. The metal could be salvaged. The frame could be reinforced. With some work, she could make it useful. "I'll take it," Sarah said. Mrs. Peterson looked surprised. "Really? Well, wonderful. Let me get you the key to the padlock." "It's locked?" Sarah asked. "Oh yes, my husband always kept it locked. I don't know why. There's nothing valuable in there, just old junk. But he was particular about that shed, said it was his private workspace." Mrs. Peterson disappeared into the house and returned with an old, rusty key. She handed it to Sarah along with a document signing over ownership of the shed. "It's all yours, dear. Good luck getting it out of here." After Mrs. Peterson went back inside, Sarah approached the shed door. Her hands trembled slightly as she inserted the key into the padlock. It was stiff, but after some wiggling it clicked open. She pulled the door open. It creaked loudly, and the smell of dust and old metal filled her nose. Inside, the shed was dark and cluttered. There were old tools hanging on the walls, boxes stacked in corners, and cobwebs everywhere. Sarah pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. As she swept the light around the space, something caught her eye. In the far back corner, partially hidden behind a pile of wooden crates, was a metal ring set into the floor. Her heart started beating faster. She walked closer, moving boxes out of the way. The metal ring was attached to a square hatch about 3 feet wide. It looked like a trap door. Sarah grabbed the ring and pulled. The hatch was heavy, but it moved. Dust flew everywhere as she lifted it open. Below the hatch was darkness. She pointed her phone's light down and saw stairs, wooden stairs leading underground. "What in the world?" she whispered. The stairs disappeared into the blackness below. Sarah's mind raced. Why would someone build a tunnel under a shed? Was it a storm shelter? A secret hiding place? She knew she should probably call someone. The police, maybe. But curiosity burned inside her. This was her shed now, her property, and she needed to know what was down there. Taking a deep breath, Sarah carefully stepped onto the first stair. It creaked under her weight but held firm. She took another step, then another. The air grew cooler as she descended. Her phone's light barely cut through the darkness. After about 20 steps, Sarah's feet hit solid ground. She was in a tunnel. The walls were dirt, held up by old wooden beams. The ceiling was low. She had to duck her head slightly to avoid hitting it. The tunnel stretched ahead of her into the darkness. Her hands were shaking now. Every horror movie she'd ever seen flashed through her mind. But she kept walking, following the tunnel as it curved gently to the left. After about 50 feet, the tunnel opened up into a small room. Sarah gasped and nearly dropped her phone. The room was filled with old wooden crates, dozens of them stacked against the walls. In the center of the room was an old desk with a chair. On the desk was a notebook, covered in dust. Sarah walked to the nearest crate and tried to open it. The lid was nailed shut. She looked around and found a rusty crowbar leaning against the wall. Using it as leverage, she pried open the crate's lid. It came off with a loud crack. She pointed her light inside and froze. The crate was filled with stacks of old paper. No, not paper, she realized as she picked one up. These were stock certificates. Old company stocks from the 1960s and 1970s. There were hundreds of them in just this one crate. With trembling hands, Sarah opened another crate, more certificates, and another, more. Every single crate in the room was packed with old stocks, bonds, and financial documents. She picked up the dusty notebook from the desk and opened it. Inside, in careful handwriting, were lists. Company names, stock amounts, dates of purchase, page after page of records. Sarah's mind struggled to understand what she was seeing. Why would someone hide all this underground? Were these stocks still worth anything? Some of the company names she recognized, big corporations that still existed today. Others she'd never heard of. She pulled out her phone, but there was no signal down here. She needed to get back to the surface, get to the internet, and figure out what all this meant. Sarah took the notebook with her and climbed back up the stairs. Her mind was spinning. She locked the shed, got in her truck, and drove straight home. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, the old notebook open beside her. She started typing company names into search engines, trying to figure out what these stocks might be worth. The first company on the list was called Advanced Computing Systems. Sarah searched for it and found that it had been bought out by a major tech company in 1985. Stockholders at the time received a huge payout. Her heart pounded. She moved to the next name. Pacific Manufacturing Corp., another buyout in 1992, another big payout. One by one, Sarah researched the companies listed in the notebook. Some had gone bankrupt and were worthless, but many had either grown into valuable corporations or had been bought out by bigger companies. And according to what she was reading, the original stockholders, or whoever legally owned those certificates, would be entitled to significant money. By 3 in the morning, Sarah had researched about 30 companies from the list. Her hands were shaking. Even with her rough calculations, if these certificates were legitimate and could be claimed, they could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. But there was a problem. Were these certificates even valid anymore? Could someone actually claim them after all these years? And most importantly, were they legally hers? Sarah knew she needed help, professional help. The next morning, exhausted but determined, she called a lawyer named David Chen. She'd fixed his car once and he seemed nice. More importantly, he was honest. "Sarah, what can I do for you?" Mr. Chen asked when his secretary connected the call. "Mr. Chen, I need advice. I bought a shed and I found something inside. Something valuable, I think. But I don't know if it's legally mine or what I should do." "Okay, slow down. Tell me everything from the beginning." Sarah explained the whole story. The classified ad, Mrs. Peterson, the shed, the tunnel, and the crates full of stock certificates. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Sarah," Mr. Chen finally said, his voice serious, "you need to come to my office right now. Bring that notebook, and don't tell anyone else about this. Not yet." 2 hours later, Sarah sat in Mr. Chen's office, watching him flip through the notebook. His expression grew more serious with each page. "This is extraordinary," he finally said, "but complicated. Here's the situation. You legally purchased the shed and everything in it. Mrs. Peterson sold it to you as is, which means whatever was inside belongs to you. However, we need to verify several things. First, are these certificates authentic? Second, are they still valid? Third, are there any legal claims against them? And fourth, we need to make sure Mrs. Peterson or her late husband didn't obtain them illegally." "Illegally?" Sarah's stomach dropped. "You think they might be stolen?" "I don't know, but we need to be careful. People don't usually hide valuable things in underground tunnels unless there's a reason. Let me make some calls. I have a friend who specializes in old securities and financial instruments. With your permission, I'd like to show him this notebook." Sarah agreed. She trusted Mr. Chen, and she knew she was in over her head. Over the next week, Sarah tried to focus on her regular work at the garage, but it was nearly impossible. Her mind kept drifting to the shed, the tunnel, and those crates. She'd covered the hatch with heavy boards and added an extra lock to the shed door. She didn't want anyone stumbling upon her discovery. Mr. Henderson came by again, demanding rent. Sarah paid him, but it left her bank account nearly empty. She ate ramen noodles for dinner every night, trying to save money, while potentially sitting on a fortune she couldn't access. Finally, Mr. Chen called. "Sarah, can you come to my office? I have news." She drove there immediately, her heart racing the entire way. In Mr. Chen's office, a second man was waiting. He was in his 60s, wearing glasses and a kind smile. Mr. Chen introduced him as Harold Winters, an expert in historical securities. "Ms. Martinez," Mr. Winters said, shaking her hand, "what you found is remarkable. I've researched the companies listed in this notebook, and I've examined the photographs you provided of the certificates. They appear to be authentic." Sarah felt dizzy, so they're real. "Yes, now here's what I've pieced together. The man who built that shed, Mrs. Peterson's late husband, what was his name?" "Robert Peterson, I think," Sarah said. "Right. Robert Peterson worked as an accountant for several companies in the 1960s and 70s. From what I can tell, he was quite good at his job and smart about investing. He bought stock in many different companies, some small, some just starting out. He was what we'd call an early investor." "But why hide them?" Sarah asked. Mr. Winters adjusted his glasses. "That I'm not entirely sure about. It might have been the Cold War paranoia of that era. Lots of people built bomb shelters and secret hiding places. Or perhaps Mr. Peterson was simply very private about his wealth. Some people are like that. Either way, he clearly documented everything carefully in this notebook. "So what happens now?" Sarah asked. Mr. Chen leaned forward. "Now comes the hard part. We need to claim these securities through the proper channels. Some of them are with companies that still exist. Those will be relatively straightforward. We contact the company's transfer agents and initiate the ownership transfer. For companies that were bought out or merged, it's more complicated. We'll need to trace through the corporate history and figure out who owes what to the certificate holders." "How long will this take?" Sarah asked. "Months probably," Mr. Chen said honestly. "Maybe longer. This isn't a quick process. But Sarah, if even half of these certificates are valuable, you're looking at a life-changing amount of money." Sarah felt tears building in her eyes. "How much?" Mr. Winters and Mr. Chen exchanged glances. "It's hard to say exactly until we verify everything," Mr. Winters said carefully. "But based on my preliminary research, conservatively, you could be looking at anywhere from $2 to $5 million, possibly more." Sarah couldn't breathe. Million? Millions. She, who couldn't even pay her rent on time, who ate ramen for dinner, who drove a truck held together by duct tape and prayer. "I know it's overwhelming," Mr. Chen said gently, "but here's what we need to do. First, we need to secure those certificates properly. They should be in a safe deposit box at a bank, not in an underground tunnel. Second, we start the legal process of claiming them. I'll handle the paperwork. Third, and this is important, you can't tell anyone about this yet. Not family, not friends. Not until everything is legally settled." "Why not?" Sarah asked. "Because the moment word gets out, you'll have people coming out of the woodwork claiming the money should be theirs. Long-lost relatives of Robert Peterson. The people who bought Mrs. Peterson's property. Scam artists. Everyone. We need to keep this quiet until your ownership is legally ironclad." Sarah nodded, understanding. "Okay, what do I do?" "For now, live your life normally. Keep working. Act like nothing's changed. Let me and Harold handle the legal and financial side. We'll update you regularly." Over the next few months, that's exactly what Sarah did. She woke up early, opened the garage, fixed cars, dealt with difficult customers, and paid her bills, barely. But now there was something different, a secret hope burning inside her. Mr. Chen called every week with updates. Some certificates had been successfully transferred to Sarah's name. Others required more paperwork, more waiting. The process was slow and frustrating, but it was happening. Sarah moved the certificates to a bank's safe deposit box, just as Mr. Chen instructed. She kept the notebook locked in a drawer at home, and she told no one. But keeping the secret was hard, especially when Mr. Henderson raised her rent. $50 more a month, he announced one morning, handing her a new lease. "Take it or leave it. I've got 3 other people interested in this space." Sarah wanted to tell him what to do with his lease. She wanted to tell him that soon she'd have more money than he'd probably ever seen. But she bit her tongue and signed the lease. Just a little longer, she told herself. 4 months after finding the tunnel, something changed. Sarah arrived at her garage one Monday morning to find Mr. Henderson's car parked out front. That was strange. He usually just showed up to collect rent, never before opening time. When she unlocked the door, she found him waiting inside. He wasn't alone. 2 men in suits stood beside him. "What's going on?" Sarah asked, her heart pounding. Mr. Henderson had a strange look on his face, something between a smile and a sneer. "Sarah, these gentlemen are from Peterson Properties, LLC. They'd like to have a word with you." One of the suits stepped forward. He was young, maybe 35, with slick-back hair and expensive shoes. "Ms. Martinez, my name is Brandon Peterson. I'm Robert Peterson's grandson." Sarah's blood ran cold. "We understand you purchased a shed from my grandmother several months ago," Brandon continued. his voice smooth but cold. "A shed that belonged to my late grandfather." "That's right," Sarah said carefully. "She sold it to me legally. I have the paperwork." "Yes, yes, the shed, for $100, quite a bargain." Brandon's smile didn't reach his eyes. "But here's the thing, Ms. Martinez. We've recently learned that you found something inside that shed, something valuable, something that rightfully belongs to my family." Sarah's mind raced. How did they know she'd been so careful? "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please," Brandon scoffed. "Don't insult my intelligence. My grandmother mentioned to my mother that you seemed very interested in that old shed, more interested than made sense for a rusty piece of junk. So I did some digging, made some calls. Imagine my surprise when I learned you've been working with a lawyer to claim old stock certificates, certificates that belonged to my grandfather." "I bought the shed legally," Sarah repeated, trying to keep her voice steady. "Everything in it is mine." "That's debatable," the second suit spoke up. He was older, with gray hair and a briefcase. "I'm Gerald Moss, attorney for the Peterson family. While you may have purchased the shed, items of significant value hidden within it, items that were clearly not intended to be included in the sale, could be considered separate property." "That's not how it works," Sarah said. "Your client sold the shed as is. That means everything inside it." "We're prepared to contest that in court," Moss said flatly. "And let me be clear, Ms. Martinez. My client has substantial resources. We can tie this up in legal battles for years, years. How much money do you have for lawyers, for court fees, for expert witnesses?" Sarah felt sick. They were right. She couldn't afford a long legal battle. Even with Mr. Chen's help, she'd be crushed by legal costs before ever seeing a penny of the certificate's value. Brandon stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt threatening. "Or we could settle this reasonably. You give us the certificates, we give you, say, $50,000, a finder's fee, more money than you've probably ever had. Everyone walks away happy." 50,000. Sarah couldn't believe it. "Those certificates are worth millions." "Allegedly," Brandon said with a smirk. "You haven't actually claimed anything yet, have you? It's all theoretical. Whereas 50,000 is real money, cash, right now. Think about it, Ms. Martinez. You're a mechanic, living paycheck to paycheck. When's the last time you had $50,000? You could pay off debts, fix up this sad little garage, maybe even take a vacation." Sarah looked at Mr. Henderson, who had stayed quiet during the exchange. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "You told them," she said to him. "You were snooping around my property and you told them." Mr. Henderson shifted uncomfortably. "I was just checking on my building. I saw you carrying boxes out of that shed you hauled here. Saw you being all secretive about it. Brandon here is a friend. I mentioned it in conversation. That's all." "That's all," Sarah's voice rose. "You violated my privacy and possibly cost me millions of dollars." "Let's not be dramatic," Brandon said smoothly. "You haven't lost anything because you never had anything. Not legally. Not yet. But this is your chance to walk away with something. Take the money, Sarah. Be smart." Sarah's mind was spinning. $50,000 was a lot of money. It would change her life, pay her bills, save her garage, but it was nothing compared to what those certificates were actually worth. And more than the money, it was the principle. She'd found those certificates. She'd bought that shed legally. They were hers. "No," she said quietly. "What?" Brandon's smile faltered. "I said no. Those certificates are mine. I bought them legally, and I'm not giving them to you." Brandon's friendly mask slipped away, revealing cold anger underneath. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," Sarah said, her voice stronger now. "But they're mine. Now get out of my garage." Gerald Moss pulled a document from his briefcase. "You'll be hearing from us, Ms. Martinez. Consider this your official notice. We're filing a lawsuit to recover the Peterson family property that you're illegally withholding." He handed her the paper and the three men walked out. Sarah stood there, shaking, the lawsuit notice trembling in her hands. The moment they were gone, she called Mr. Chen. "They found out," she said, her voice cracking. "Brandon Peterson. He knows about the certificates and he's suing me." "I was afraid of this," Mr. Chen said with a sigh. "Okay, don't panic. Forward me that lawsuit. We'll fight this. You have right on your side, Sarah. You purchased the property legally." "But they said they'd drag it out for years. I can't afford." "Sarah, listen to me. I've been waiting to tell you this until it was official, but maybe now is the right time. 3 of the certificates from companies that still exist have been successfully transferred to your name. The companies have issued checks. Sarah, you have $240,000 waiting for you." Sarah sat down hard on the floor. "What?" "The money is real, it's yours. We can use some of it to fight this lawsuit. And we're going to win, Sarah, I promise you." Tears rolled down Sarah's face. $240,000. She'd never had that much money in her entire life. "There's more coming," Mr. Chen continued. "Much more. We've got at least 15 more certificates that we're still processing. The Petersons don't have a legal leg to stand on. They're just hopping to bully you into giving up, but we're not going to let that happen." The lawsuit was filed. Brandon Peterson versus Sarah Martinez. The local news picked up the story, and suddenly everyone in town was talking about it. "Female mechanic strikes it rich," the headlines read. "Family fights for grandfather's fortune." Strangers stopped Sarah on the street. Some congratulated her. Others told her she should give the money back to the Peterson family. Everyone had an opinion. Mr. Henderson evicted her from the garage, claiming she'd violated her lease by using the space to store stolen property. Sarah had to rent a different building, a better one actually, now that she had money, but the betrayal still stung. The lawsuit dragged on. Depositions, paperwork, lawyers arguing over every detail. Brandon Peterson appeared on local TV playing the victim. "My grandfather's legacy," he said, his voice choked with fake emotion. "Stolen by someone who took advantage of my elderly grandmother." Sarah refused to do interviews. Mr. Chen advised against it. "Let them talk," he said. "We'll let the law decide." In the meantime, more checks arrived. More certificates were claimed. Sarah's bank account grew. 300,000, 500,000, 800,000. She paid off every debt she had. She bought new equipment for her garage. She hired 2 employees. She set up a scholarship fund for young women interested in automotive repair, named after her father. But the lawsuit hung over everything like a dark cloud. Brandon Peterson wasn't giving up. His lawyers filed motion after motion, trying to delay the case, trying to find some technicality that would give them leverage. Finally, after 8 months of legal battles, they went to court. The courtroom was packed. Brandon Peterson sat at one table with his expensive lawyers. Sarah sat at the other with Mr. Chen. She wore her nicest clothes, a simple dress she'd bought for the occasion, but she still felt out of place. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Judge Margaret Hartley. She had a reputation for being fair but no nonsense. Brandon's lawyer, Gerald Moss, went first. He argued that the stock certificates were hidden treasure, not part of the normal contents of the shed. He claimed that Robert Peterson had clearly intended to keep them separate and that his family should inherit them. "These certificates represent my client's grandfather's life work," Moss said dramatically. "His careful investments, his financial wisdom. They were hidden because they were precious to him. To allow Ms. Martinez to keep them would be to rob the Peterson family of their rightful inheritance." Then it was Mr. Chen's turn. He stood up calmly and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, this case is actually quite simple. Ms. Martinez purchased the shed from Mrs. Peterson for $100. The sale document clearly states as is, which is a legal term meaning the buyer receives the property in its current condition, including all contents. Mrs. Peterson was the legal owner of the shed and everything in it. She had the right to sell it. Ms. Martinez had the right to buy it. Everything inside that shed, whether it was visible or hidden, became Ms. Martinez's property the moment the sale was completed. But the certificates were hidden, Moss objected. Hidden things don't stop being part of the property, Mr. Chen countered. If someone buys a house and finds money hidden in the walls, that money belongs to them. The seller doesn't get to come back later and demand it. The law is clear on this. Judge Hartley looked at Brandon Peterson. Mr. Peterson, did your grandmother know about these certificates when she sold the shed? Brandon hesitated. I don't know, Your Honor. Let me rephrase. Did you know about them? No, Your Honor. Did any member of your family? No. So your grandmother sold a shed that had been on her property for decades, and neither she nor anyone in the family had any idea there were valuable certificates hidden inside. That's correct, Bud. And Ms. Martinez purchased this shed legally, for the agreed-upon price, with a signed document transferring ownership. Yes, but the certificates were in the shed, which Ms. Martinez legally owned. Judge Hartley looked at Moss. Counselor, do you have any legal precedent that would allow your client to reclaim property that was sold legally and in good faith? Moss shuffled his papers. Your Honor, we believe the principle of unjust enrichment applies. It would be unjust for Ms. Martinez to. Unjust enrichment applies when someone receives money or property that they're not legally entitled to, Judge Hartley interrupted. But Ms. Martinez is legally entitled to this property. She purchased it. Do you have anything else? The courtroom was silent. Judge Hartley leaned back in her chair. I've seen a lot of cases in my years on the bench, but this one particularly bothers me. Mr. Peterson, you and your family knew Mrs. Peterson was selling that shed. You knew she was moving. Did any of you offer to help her, to check the property, to see if there was anything valuable she might be selling? Brandon didn't answer. Ms. Martinez saw an opportunity. She purchased the shed legally. She took the time and effort to explore her property. She discovered something valuable. That's not theft. That's not fraud. That's the reward for being thorough and curious. Judge Hartley looked at Sarah. Ms. Martinez, you have documented your purchase correctly. Yes, Your Honor, Sarah said, her voice shaking. And you've been working with Mr. Chen to legally claim these certificates through the proper channels. Yes, Your Honor. And you've paid taxes on the money you've received so far. Yes, Your Honor, every penny. Judge Hartley nodded. She looked back at Brandon. Mr. Peterson, I'm going to give you some free advice. Sometimes in life we miss opportunities. Your grandfather built something valuable. Your grandmother inherited it. And through no fault of her own, or perhaps through simple lack of knowledge, she sold it for $100. That's unfortunate. But it doesn't give you the right to take it away from someone who purchased it legally. She banged her gavel. I rule in favor of the defendant, Sarah Martinez. The stock certificates found in the shed are legally her property. Case dismissed. Mr. Peterson, you and your family are ordered to cease any further harassment or legal action regarding this matter. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Your Honor, Brandon said through gritted teeth. Sarah couldn't believe it. She'd won. It was over. After the court ruling, things moved quickly. With the lawsuit resolved, Mr. Chen and Mr. Winters accelerated the process of claiming the remaining certificates. More checks arrived. More companies confirmed the authenticity of the stocks. By the end of the year, Sarah had claimed everything. The final total was staggering, $4.2 million. $4.2 million. Sarah sat in her new office. She'd expanded the garage and added a proper business space and looked at the bank statement. Even after taxes, after legal fees, after everything, she had more money than she'd ever dreamed of. But she didn't quit her job. She didn't buy a mansion or a fancy car. Instead, she invested in her community. She expanded Martinez Auto Repair. hearing more employees and offering training programs for young people interested in mechanics. She focused especially on young women, knowing how hard it was to be taken seriously in this field. She bought the building from Mr. Henderson. He couldn't refuse her offer, and converted the upper floors into affordable housing for working families. She donated money to the local library, the community center, and schools. She set up a fund to help small business owners in town who were struggling, just like she had been. And yes, she did buy herself a nice truck, and took a vacation, and got her roof fixed. She deserved those things. Mrs. Peterson reached out to her one day, calling the garage. "Sarah, dear, I heard about the court case. I'm so sorry about my grandson. He can be difficult." "It's okay, Mrs. Peterson," Sarah said. "I hope you're not upset with me." "Upset, dear? I'm thrilled for you. I sold you that shed fair and square. Whatever you found in it is yours. My Robert would have liked you, I think. He always said the best treasures are the ones you work to find." They talked for a while. Mrs. Peterson told stories about her late husband, about his love of investing, about how he'd always said those stocks would be worth something someday. "He always planned to use that money for something special," Mrs. Peterson said, "but he passed before he got the chance. I think he'd be happy knowing it's going to someone who will use it well." After they hung up, Sarah thought about that. Robert Peterson had worked hard, invested wisely, and hidden his treasure away. And now, through a strange twist of fate, his careful planning had changed her life. 2 years later, Martinez Auto Repair was the most successful garage in town. Sarah employed 15 people. She'd opened a second location, and she'd started a non-profit called Second Chance Repairs, offering free car repairs to single parents and families struggling financially. She knew what it was like to have your car break down and not have money to fix it, to worry about losing your job because you can't get to work. She wanted to help others the way she wished someone had helped her. One day, a young woman came into the garage. She was maybe 20, with nervous eyes and grease-stained hands. "Are you Sarah Martinez?" the young woman asked. "That's me. What can I do for you?" I want to be a mechanic. My guidance counselor said you offer training programs, but I don't have money for school, and everyone tells me girls can't be mechanics. They say I should find a different job." Sarah smiled. She'd heard those words before. She'd lived them. "What's your name?" "Jessica." "Well, Jessica, let me tell you a story. It starts with a rusty shed. Sometimes life surprises us. Sometimes the thing everyone else overlooks becomes the most valuable thing in the world. Sometimes the rusty shed holds a treasure. Sometimes the person everyone underestimates becomes the success story. Sarah Martinez bought a shed for $100. She could have just hauled it away and forgotten about it, but she was curious. She explored. She asked questions. She wasn't afraid to climb down into that dark tunnel and see what was there. And that curiosity changed everything. But here's the real secret. The money wasn't the most important thing Sarah found in that tunnel. The most important thing was the reminder that treasures exist everywhere if we're willing to look for them, that opportunities hide in plain sight, that sometimes the best investments are the ones everyone else ignores. Sarah could have given up when Brandon Peterson threatened her. She could have taken the $50,000 and walked away. It would have been easier, safer. But she fought for what was rightfully hers. She stood up for herself. She refused to be bullied. And now she uses her fortune not just for herself, but to help others find their own treasures, whether that's a career, a second chance, or just a working car to get them through another day. The next time someone tells you that you can't do something, remember Sarah. Remember that the quietest person in the room might be the strongest. Remember that rusty sheds sometimes hold millions. Remember that curiosity, courage, and refusing to give up can change everything.